Okay, I think we're ready to start, and we'll just go ahead, and as people are joining in, we'll continue to welcome them. This is our welcome to Toronto Congregation Beyond the Walls. This is our first ever online service, and we're very happy to have Sean and Alfredo here from Community Place, who are sharing their technology and know-how with us to be able to get us online and get us here so that we can interact with people and connect with you all. I wanted to do just a brief bit of introductions. So my name is John Hamer. I'm pastor of the downtown Toronto Congregation of Community of Christ here at Toronto Centre Place. And also we will have today in serving in ministry, we'll have Leandro Palacios, who is our financial officer and also our spiritual formation minister. And we'll also have Russ Pirie, who's one of the revitalization ministers here in Canada. There'll be a time, we'll have a time in the kind of the middle of this. We're hoping this will last just about an hour. This is the very first one, so you can bear with us just a little bit in terms of how all of this kind of format is working. And as these go, we're hoping by the, right now to introduce this as a monthly meeting, a monthly gathering, a monthly service, and then ultimately to move this to being a weekly event. We'll have a time for, this is kind of an interesting new technology we have with Zoom, so you can kind of see how we're able to have multiple people in multiple locations all online, and you can see all their screens too. I think the way we're doing this is, are you muting people here at the location here? So the way it works is that for the most part and for the most of the time, all the remote locations are going to be muted until we are switching. And so then for the way that people are going to be able to interact, are we doing like a chat window or anything like that? We don't really have anything set up, right?
There's a chat window that they can type into if they'd like to say something, or they can hold up their hand in the camera and we'll unmute them.
Okay, so if you want, yeah, well, I'm going to repeat that. Okay. So if you were to want to be unmuted, what we'll do is you can raise your hand and Sean will recognize you, and we can switch cameras. And then also the other way is that you can type into the chat window, and that'll be possible for. So we'll switch the screen to talking with you, having you talk. And we'll do that a little bit during the community sharing moment, which will come kind of in the middle of this service. The service we're envisioning will last about an hour each time. So why don't we go ahead and bring up the slides with that introduction. And so what we'll do is occasionally here is we'll switch from the camera here to the different slides. So again, I want to welcome you to Beyond the Walls, we're calling this. We don't think that church needs to be contained within the walls of our church, but we want to go out and do mission everywhere. Go to the next slide. So welcome. Here in Toronto Centre Place, we actually, our membership is not, including our official membership, isn't restricted to just the people who are immediately in our vicinity. We already have 4 official members of the church who are members of our congregation who don't live in the city, and they may well be online here with us. And we also are looking forward to having seekers who, for example, don't live anywhere near where there's a physical congregation, and also for people who maybe are unable to travel or who have scheduling conflicts on a Sunday. We want to be able to build community where you are. And so hopefully what this will be is not simply us broadcasting to you, but we think that with this software and also kind of the social technological know-how here, this will be community building in a real sense as we kind of interact together. Next one. So I just want to introduce just briefly our agenda for the night as we try to work through this. So we're calling, like I say, Beyond the Walls. Our theme tonight is Live Life Meaningfully, which is really one of our core themes that we have as a congregation. We're doing the introduction right now. We'll next go to talking about our mission as a congregation. Then switch to Leandro, who will do a meditative vocation. And we're going to try singing together. And it's very complicated to do that using teleconferencing. because of lag and that kind of thing. And also a lot of you may be in places where, let's say you aren't feeling comfortable, you're all by yourself and you don't feel comfortable singing out loud, or maybe it's not, you're not very easily able to. On the other hand, we kind of think it's important experientially for the singing to be able to kind of, let's say there's something different between just watching this on the screen and actually singing with people. And so we only have one hymn here that we're going to do, but we're going to still try singing together. Then we'll do our peace lesson, a prayer for peace. We'll have that community sharing time we talked about. We'll give a kind of a brief evening message and our disciple-centered response, and we'll close with the challenge of the month. Go ahead and go next. So our mission here as a congregation in Toronto Centered Place is related to the Community Christ World Church Mission Initiatives. And so these are as a fivefold, and the first is invite everyone into community. So one of the ways that we do that is by here in our building right downtown, we have an inclusive, welcoming community where everyone is welcome. So the next one is continually learn and grow. And so, for example, one of the ways that we do that here is we have what we call our history, theology, and philosophy group pretty much every Tuesday. And we talk about two different topics that are anywhere related to, we're seeing how many people here that we know. That's great. So anyway, one of the things that we do there is, like I say, we talk about all sorts of lifelong learning issues and that kind of thing. We'll go to the next one. Abolish poverty, ending needless suffering. And so one of the ways that we do that here in Toronto is through Cienido Social Housing, where the church's social housing arm affiliated charity operate. We're trying to figure out who that is so we can help mute you. Is operating social housing here in Toronto, 3 social housing apartments. And another way we do that is through our other affiliate board here in Canada, which does all sorts of social housing, all sorts of wonderful developmental projects in the developing world, which is for concentrating on sustainable development. So helping people to help themselves. Go to the next. Promoting peace and justice. And one of the ways that we do that here in Toronto is through our Encounter World Religions Center. This is a wonderful program. If you don't know anything about it, it's been a week here this summer where people can come. We employ here, you can see a picture here of Brian Caruana, who is a religious studies professor who teaches you about, let's say, a faith tradition, and then we go and meet that tradition. And so in this case, in the pictures we have, learning about Sikhs, going and meeting the Sikhs, learning about the Zoroastrians, going and meeting the Zoroastrians. And it's just a wonderful way to promote peace through understanding. And finally, living life meaningfully together, which is our theme tonight. And there's all different ways that we do that. But one of the ways that we do that here, we've just finished our Zen mindfulness meditation group, which we have every Tuesday and Thursday. And so sometimes people from the meditation group may want to be staying for this service and interacting with all of you here online. So that altogether is our mission. And so now we'll go ahead and go on to our invocation with Leandro.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm very happy to see so many people on the screen. And for this particular section, I chose I think it's a Taoist painting. And the idea is, let's try to clear our minds a little bit. So if you're staring at the screen, maybe just look at the screen and see this just calming, soothing Chinese Taoist art. If not, if you wish, you can close your eyes for a moment. And you've done this before. It's just a prayer. I'm only going to guide you through it. It's a prayer that is not going to be about the words. It's a prayer that, like any other prayer, we try to find and connect with God, that connection happens by finding an eternal moment in the present instant that you're living in. So we start simply by breathing naturally, in and out, deeply but naturally, and simply feel the air going in and out of your body. And there's going to be distractions. There's going to be people that will continue to join us. There might be someone in the room next to you making noises, a baby making noises right next to you. Just make that be part of your prayer. Do not let that distract you from your goal, which is to connect to God no matter what, no matter where you are. We're all here together in this present moment that is timeless. And because it's timeless, it's eternal. And in that eternal, we find God. We find its presence. We find the wisdom of God. We find its power that fills our body. We build a temple in this timeless, eternal moment where we all understand each other, where we're all at peace. And from this moment, we move on with the understanding that finding God inside ourselves and outside ourselves in this timeless moment, we bring this presence, this blessing, this power, this beauty, and this perfection. We bring it forward for the benefit of others. Those who we know, those who we love, those who are here today, and also those who we don't know, everyone in the world, even our enemies. And we say these things in the name of what's holy, vast, timeless, limitless. Amen. So we will continue now, if we can. Let's see how this works. I don't know what the hymn number is. So what is it?
Go forward the screen.
Oh. Do we have the words that we can put on the screen for those who don't have?
Forward. So, it doesn't say.
Okay, so we're gonna sing. Community of Christ sings hymn number 342. That is, too often, God, your name is used. And so we're gonna have the words on the screen for those of you who don't have a copy of the hymnal. So please follow along. Are we going to hear everyone or
no, I think we aren't because of the lag.
Okay.
So we'll sing here, and we're going to have the music.
Okay.
I'll be over here too, so I can sing with you.
Can I move the chair a little bit?
People can sing into the new computer.
And you sing, you can sing
Okay,
in it
well.
because really we want to do this, and so if it doesn't work, that singing doesn't work. But I think we should try it. So. And we love our new hymnal, so this will be kind of a fun thing, and we can all try it together. And okay.
Can we have the slides? This is a peace lesson. We at Toronto Congregation, we've been well, at some point we were using the peace lessons that are published on the church's website, and then we had the idea of, I think it was 2015, of doing religions, different world religions, and 2016 was
War and Peace.
War and Peace. And this year, we decided to focus on our perfect peace on landless people. So as opposed to a particular country that you might find on the church's website, we wanted to also think about people who don't have a country and who are, well, for political reasons, but who consider themselves or who claim to have the right to have their own country. And one of those people are the Mapuche people of Argentina and Chile. And when I wrote this perfect peace, not perfect peace, this peace lesson a couple months ago, my inspiration was the news that the struggle that this community was having at that particular time that was not being covered in the mainstream media. And it took a little bit of research to learn what was happening. Today, when I checked the most recent news to see if some developments have happened on that front, well, it seems like things are pretty much where they were when I wrote this lesson. So in 2017, let's go back to, can we see the slides?
Yeah.
There you go. That's the Mapuche flag. So let's move forward. So the Inca Empire stretched over most of the Andean region of South America. Their expansion stopped in what today is central Chile, and that's on the map that you see on the right, because the Inca found a local nation there who fought bravely to preserve their autonomy, and their struggle against this common mighty empire led these different groups of people to coalesce as one single nation with one identity, the Mapuche. Now, Spain conquered the Inca in 1533, and soon after, the conquistadors reached this region where the Mapuche lived. And of course, Spain quickly gained control of much of the land, pressuring many to migrate east of the Andes to the Argentine Patagonia. So through conquest and peaceful assimilation, the Mapuche language, culture, and identity expanded across this southernmost region of South America. Can we move forward? So that's a very, very ancient, not ancient, sorry. It's from very early colonial times, people, had this idea of the empire, Inca Empire fighting the Mapuche. And well, that's the conquest of the Inca. And this is the land. So from living in a really rich land, they were pushed to a desert, a very barren desert. And here they had to adopt a new kind of lifestyle. So now that went on until in the end of 19th century. At the same time, the United States and Canada were consolidating their control over the Aboriginal peoples of the prairies. Brutal military campaigns brought the Mapuche lands under the control of Chile and Argentina. Now, during the 20th century, most of the land that once belonged to the Mapuche was sold to international corporations, and the Mapuche continued to claim the rights to these lands. But the authorities often respond to these claims with violent repression allowed by anti-terrorist laws inherited from the military dictatorship era. And so the latest episode of this 500-year-old conflict took place 2 months ago when provincial authorities shot rubber bullets against Mapuche demonstrators because they considered that these demonstrations are illegal, that these people have no right to claim and their lands, their ancestral lands. And it happens to be, this is one of these many lands that happen to be owned by international corporations, this particular one by Italian textile magnate Luciano Benetton, who is the largest landowner in the region.
Frozen?
Today, 9% of the Chilean population and more than 100 people in Argentina identify themselves as Mapuche. That's about 1 million plus people altogether. In both countries, many people have traditionally held a negative opinion of protesters like the Mapuche, but the good news is that public opinion, public sentiments are changing as people become more and more aware of the history of these people and to one extent the history of their own country. Thank you. We have more slides? Oh, there you go. And those are Mapuche priests from, I think that's the late 19th century.
Good evening. I'm so thrilled that you have taken time from your busy schedules to join us. I've been asked to offer the prayer for peace. Just want to give a little bit of background first. As a church, Community of Christ has been doing peace prayers on a regular basis for quite some time. In fact, back December the 3rd, 1993, we held a peace prayer in our temple in Independence, Missouri. And every single day, without fail, since then, we have had a peace prayer, lit the candle, had a prayer, a short talk, something similar to what Leandro just did in the temple. And it's usually in the sanctuary, sometimes in the meditation chapel. It's always open to absolutely anyone. And we've been doing that since 1993, and I'm very proud of that. I'd like to share with you a peace prayer, and it's been modified, but this is something that someone wrote a while ago, and I was really drawn to it and wanted to share it. I had no idea what Leandro was going to talk about tonight. And when we had tried to have this meeting last month, and for whatever reason we had to delay it. And I don't know if you call this divine intervention or coincidence. I'll let you decide. But with our peace prayer, every day we pick a different country. It's mapped out a year or two in advance of what country. Christmas Day, it's for world peace. So yesterday, for example, the prayer for peace was for Botswana. Today it's for South Africa. And tomorrow, Chile.
Oh.
What are the chances? So here's our prayer for peace. Holy One, mysterious One, we become weary, God, weary of believing in the healing of all nations, weary of hoping for the reign of your compassionate justice in all lands. We become afraid of the violence and toxic hatreds that engulf the human family. We weep for the children, for the mothers and fathers of the children. We hope we will not have to hear another story of human life, beautiful, miraculous life, wasted frivolously as though it were of no value. But the world outside these walls is a sea of such stories, and at times we feel we will drown in the tears of earth's peoples, your people, God. Speak peace, your peace, into the silence of this moment. And we shall believe it is in this moment and work for it in all the moments to come. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
we want to have a moment now for community sharing time. And so the topic that I kind of wanted to put forward for all of you who've joined in with us is maybe just if you want to briefly, if anybody wants to briefly say why they maybe joined on to the congregation, to the Beyond the Walls tonight, and possibly also then what you want us to be doing, or what would you like us to see, what would you like to see here? How would you like us to proceed going forward? And so maybe just a very brief statement to that. If anybody has something that they would like to share or say, that may be the direction. And so I guess Sean is watching, or it's not everybody's on camera, but they can also type in a text if
they'd like to talk.
If you'd like to talk.
I think Parker would like to talk.
Parker wants to talk?
Parker always wants to talk. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm at the airport in San Francisco. I think I was going to get to join, but that's the beauty of these online gatherings, is if there's a Wi-Fi connection, you're kind of set. So I was happy that I could join. I really just enjoyed this from the perspective of looking at doing this a different way than I've seen it done with Community Place or Space or Plus or any of these other online communities. And I'm really just anxious to see where it goes as far as you all putting your spin on it in Toronto, and maybe presentations, or I really liked just all the visuals that you guys had. So I'm just kind of a big fan. So I'm just hanging out and enjoying all this time together with you all. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Some other people want to talk there? Jess, do you want to talk, or just your family does?
Oh, well, I think he's just trying to have attention.
Hi. Thank you for joining us.
We have really enjoyed. Okay, all right, guys, let me talk. We've enjoyed the some of the other online gatherings, so I was excited that you guys were doing one in Toronto. And like Parker said, I really liked your visuals, and I really enjoyed the prayer for peace with the explanation and background about who we were praying for. So that really was very, very good. So I'm just hoping to get more exposure to things, I guess. I don't know.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. Yeah. So like Leandro was pointing out, we've had I think in this congregation, we've had an interesting way that we've approached the prayer for peace lesson, where we are discerning as a congregation different kinds of topics. And so we've been creating additional lessons. And so like that one, for example, that Leandro researched and put together. We've also had some of our other members who are not local to Toronto. So J. Seth Anderson is a historian who is now moved to Massachusetts, but he has, for example, written some of our peace lessons and this kind of thing. And so we get a bunch of interesting information that way. And so maybe one of the things that'll be a little different that we do here is that we have a bunch of presentations that we do, like in our like I say, our theology group, and also on Sunday morning in classes, and then also in the meditation group. And so we'll be sharing some of that kind of content and presentations, and as you say, the graphics and visuals, we'll share with those with this service too. Was somebody else raising their hand? I wasn't. We have it set up right now, so I'm supposed to look this way, but then you're all over there. So we'll get that sorted, because we wanted this in the background. So, right.
Well, hi everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, great. I'm joining you from my treadmill in my home office, and that's one of the advantages of being able to join online. But I've always been a great supporter of things that the Toronto congregation is doing, and something as innovative as this, I believe, is part of the future direction that some online congregation activities will take place as. As a friend of mine says, in order to often understand the meaningfulness of innovative things like this, it's often hard to explain those things to someone. So the best thing to do is to join in and experience it. So that's why I'm online tonight, to actually experience it, so I can find out how meaningful it can be.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I agree with you entirely. I appreciate it. Do you have anybody else who wants to introduce themselves and share? Leon? Leon, hi.
Hi. Am I connecting?
Yes, great to hear from you.
Hi. I was glad in a way that tonight my normal Thursday night ride to Norton Heights congregation was not able to take me. We have our Thursday evening weekly shares and cares and prayers time, which is a sort of traditional prayer meeting, but we do all kinds of interesting group discussions and praying with each other in different ways. So Chris Judd will probably be upset I'm not there, but I heard about this today and I thought this would fit in just after the dog walk. And so Bernardo's on the floor there, and I'm here. I enjoy learning about what Toronto Congregation is doing. I really appreciate John's ministry and everybody there and the high-tech aspect of it. Lovely congregation setting there, and just pleased to participate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you. Oh, yeah. Jason.
Well, thank you. I assume you guys can hear me because it's been pretty smooth and I've been impressed. I'm really excited to see something like this happen. I am actually joining from the center of Utah, a little place called Panguitch near Bryce Canyon. And the nearest congregation to me is at least a couple hours away. And so sometimes on Sunday I'll go down to that one, or I'll go up to one in Provo-Warham area. It's a couple, almost 2.5 hours away, but I really like the thought that I can have a community around me, irregardless of where I'm at and how far away I am from other people. And I'm really excited to see this type of an idea and this type of worship take place. I also have been really impressed with some of the unique things we've done just tonight. I've never had a meditative invocation, for example, and I'm really excited to see all new different ways into spirituality. And I think your congregation, from what I've seen on Facebook, does a great job with that.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it's very exciting that you're joining us, because, like I say, one of the ideas is that I just hear from people on Facebook and all over the place so often. Boy, I wish there was a congregation near me. I live in South Island of New Zealand, and there's no one down here with me in this kind of thing, or wherever the different places are. And so anyway, the capacity to do this, that we have the actual software, and that hopefully build community this way, I think is very, very exciting. So I should be looking this way, yes. Except for, so.
I want to see everyone.
Yeah, I want to see everyone. Well, we'll set it up the other way next time, so. Does anybody else want to share, or should we go ahead and move on? We'll go ahead and move on. Why don't we switch to the shared slides. And the next portion of the service here, so that's sharing time. The next portion of the service is our evening message. This is actually the title slide from the most recent presentation that we had here in our History, Theology, Philosophy group, where we talked about the book of Job and the problem of evil. And because we had kind of a whole long session on that and a big long discussion with everybody in the theology group afterwards, that's been one of the things that I've been really thinking about a lot lately. And so that's what the focus, in a way, of the message tonight. The problem of evil, depending on how you define it, can be defined a couple different ways. So sometimes people say, well, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do the righteous suffer? And then sometimes we say, I think even more than the righteous suffer, we wonder, why do rotten people do so well often? Because I think that people actually are more worried about other people doing really good or better than them than they're worried about their own problems too. So anyway, that's as we are looking at the problem of evil in this traditional formulation, and it's something that everybody kind of struggles with. So go ahead. So one current answer that is existing in the 21st century in traditional Christianity, or in some kinds of, it's not necessarily traditional, but anyway, in big church Christianity, is that the righteous actually don't suffer, that the righteous are continually blessed. And so there's this idea that we sometimes call under the banner here of the prosperity gospel, that one of the ways that you can tell if you are wealthy, if you have done very well, you are being blessed by God, and that is happening because you're righteous. And so this is almost the most simplistic answer to the problem of evil. All right, so one of the things in the prosperity gospel, and this is true not just in Christianity, but I'm thinking in Abrahamic religion in general, this idea can creep up, which is an individual, they do good deeds, you bring God into the mix, God then blesses you for those good deeds, and that shows an indication that you're a righteous individual. And so that's kind of like a basic prosperity gospel equation. And then if you go in the opposite, equation, that to have that work out the same way, if you have sinful deeds as an individual, then God gives you misfortunes or curses you, and that's because you're a wicked individual. So the problem is when we turn this around and we see then the people are blessed, we are immediately seeing this as, let's say, logically, we're concluding that they're doing good deeds and they're a righteous individual. Whereas if a person is experiencing some sort of misfortune, that means that they're experiencing sinful deeds and they're a wicked individual. And that's certainly, for example, in the book of Job, that's what Job's friends kept on telling him. They kept on telling him he was declaring that he was an innocent person, and we knew that from the book he was. But his friends all indicated, well, you must have sinned somewhere, and so you need to repent of those sins because you're wicked, clearly. And this isn't only true in Abrahamic religion. And so a lot of times in the West, we have a kind of a simplistic idea of karma. And so this idea of karma is that if you've achieved some kind of material blessing in this life, then that's coming from good deeds that you may have had in a past life. And so you were a righteous individual in your past life. Karma also, if you were having some kind of bad thing happen to you, then you're experiencing sinful, you're getting the results of horrible things you've done in your past life because you were a wicked individual. So prosperity gospel is not limited then to the Abrahamic religions. And so part of that then is, well, he's so rich, he must be a really righteous guy. That's the logical consequences of that. Whereas if we look at, for example, Syrian refugee children, they must have done something to deserve this suffering, right? That's how the logical consequences of the prosperity gospel. So the problem with that, obviously, is that since the rain clearly falls on the just and the unjust alike, why do people continue to believe this kind of prosperity gospel thing? Some people overtly, but a lot of us end up having this in a background sense. We look at people who are experiencing misfortune and we assume that there's some bad behavior that's a result of it. In part, I would say that this is a sense of self-satisfaction. When you're prospering, you're doing really good, so you want to think of yourself as being really good. And then there is also a sort of disconnect that we have, a righteous disconnect from the suffering of others. And the problem for individuals when we are in this boat is that what happens if something bad befalls you? Then suddenly your whole philosophy falls apart for you. So in a kind of a simple equation sense of it here is, God is good, God is just, you do good deeds, God blesses you, God is good, God is just, you do sinful deeds, God punishes you. That's the basic equation of the prosperity gospel. But when we're thinking about that, we then run the risk of blaming the victims, right? So people are tested beyond what their capacities are. People do experience horrors that are, let's say, little children experience horrors that are obviously not deserved. And so this is something that, is a very dangerous philosophy or theology to have taken on. Again, that equation: good, God, law, justice, disobedience, sin, wickedness. So go ahead. So I'm going to suggest that even all the way back to the antiquity and the Middle Ages, there has been always a much more sophisticated theology and philosophy that brings a lot more into the mix than the simple equation of the prosperity gospel. The divine is seen as good with a capital G, law, justice, but also mercy, love, wisdom, empathy, charity, forgiveness, salvation, grace, and I think ultimately, and most importantly maybe, is meaning itself. In looking for the good, in looking for the divine, and looking for the one, the source. Even the pre-Christian, the pagan philosophers, Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, they were looking for meaning. What is the eternal meaning? What is the source of everything? Where is the source of good? What is good? How does one live the good life? So, as we are looking at in this equation, then what we don't actually in this congregation often use the word sin, and yet the word sin is part of this vocabulary and is part of our scripture. So how do we understand sin? So in the original equation, or in this equation that is there in the prosperity gospel, it's often seen as particular acts that are in disobedience to a literal list of God's commandments. So Charlton Heston has these 2 stone tablets. Those are listing off to 10 and then later 2,000 or so, 4,000, however many particular rules. And if you're breaking any particular one of those, that is what constitutes sin, no matter what, even if, let's say, breaking a literal law may actually have a good result for somebody. So these these can be things like in the RLDS church, up in the congregation here, up until the 1960s, nobody was allowed to dance. No coffee or tea, is a thing that's still going on in the LDS tradition. Some people adhere to that in Community of Christ as well. In the Hebrew tradition, the Jewish tradition, no shellfish. Other kinds of dietary restrictions. In my own family, we had this thing about no swimming on Sunday. That was for my mom, that was pretty much the most crucial one of the commandments almost, and that's the one that they've actually continued to adhere to. And my parents now live at a lake house, and there's no swimming on Sunday, although they've given up on almost everything else in terms of the rules. But anyway, that's the one they're holding to. So there is then, I think then, if we're looking at this though, there's a much more complexity to the potential here in our complex spirituality. So sin on the one hand is evil and chaos, injustice, but all sorts of other things that we are holding with maybe within us as individuals: spite, hate. I think especially ignorance, self-focus, self-centeredness, selfishness, refusing to forgive, isolating yourself, and then ultimately also, I think, rejecting the seeing of meaning in anything that you're doing, and consequences, or whether there's value in anything, and then in part maybe nihilism. Let's go ahead. So in that way, a proposal I maybe make tonight is that, as I've been pondering on this in the problem of evil, that in part this is absence of meaning, or let's say distancing oneself from things like wisdom, from good, from all of those ways that we're defining meaning and the divine. So the call then that I have as our message tonight is embracing a life of meaning. In our congregation, in our church community, we have had a goal of working towards living enduring principles rather than adherence to a strict set of just literal rules that are from one time and place. And so from those principles, I think we're called to make use of our own discernment to make responsible choices that seek to avoid participating in injustice, spite, hate, ignorance, self-centeredness, selfishness, all of those things we talked about, and instead participating in the good with a capital G. Things like love, wisdom, empathy, mercy, forgiveness, charity, and all the like. So as our message and challenge we'll have a challenge later, but anyway, as individuals and in community, the idea then is participating in the good, and doing so though in a way that is responsibly interpreted and meaningfully applied in our lives. So
So now we'll go ahead and move on.
Toronto Congregation is a charity. Am I on camera
You
again?
can switch to him now.
Once again, Toronto Congregation is a charity legally incorporated in Canada and the US. And I'm here because I serve as the congregation's financial officer. So I'll bring this Disciples Generous Response to you today. Our budgets are approved by our members at our congregation business meetings, and our spending is fully transparent, and it is reported to Revenue Canada and posted on their website for public review. The Disciples' Generous Response in Community of Christ is our tradition for making financial contributions to the operations of the Toronto Congregation, our mission center, and to our denomination. For those for whom this is an alien practice, or if not alien, at least a little unsettling, having this ritual during our worship service can seem to be mixing something holy and sacred, meeting together in church, with the thing in our lives that seems least sacred. But however, in the 21st century, in a wholly monetized universe, nevertheless, worship as our primary idol, money. And yet, in some ways, here, we are recognizing that this is part of our lives and a necessary part, a necessary part of our lives and our commitment to the community building. We are not called to contribute only money. We are called to offer service in all sorts of ways in our lives, sometimes ministry of presence. Just listening to the story of someone in need is the most generous response a disciple can offer. But we also recognize that money contributions are necessary, a very necessary component of our commitment to building up the peaceable commonwealth. And so freely giving as the Spirit moves can also be a spiritual practice. By having this ritual in our worship service, I am told that we differ from our Restoration cousins, the LDS Church, who do not have offertories or collection of tithes during the sacrament meetings, but instead have systematized giving a full 10% of income to the church, reviewed annually in a personal interview with the bishop called tithing settlement, which is a requirement for full membership with temple privileges. By contrast, our understanding in Community of Christ is that we experience generosity in our lives and communities in the universe. And we respond to that generosity as we feel individually called by tithing to true capacity. If you would like to contribute to Toronto Congregation, you can visit torontocongregation.com and make a donation using the PayPal buttons that we have there. We have one for US donations, one for Canadian donations, and you may also specify that you would like to direct your contribution to supporting the online production or the World Church, whichever category you would choose for your donation. If you are a resident of the US or Canada, your contributions are tax deductible. Thank you for your support of our mission. Your contributions allow us to provide this ministry and expand our library of online content. Thank you.
I'll say bye. You can sit in the challenge and I'll say bye.
Okay. I've been given the opportunity to present the challenge of the month, and I immediately realized that it's not so much the challenge of the month as the challenge of the night for me, because it's supposed to reflect on something that was said or happened during the service. So obviously I had to pay attention. But I was struck by a couple of things. One is in one of our hymns, number 260, Rain Down, our old version, which was in the gold hymn book, really, I think, reflected prosperity doctrine without realizing it, because the traditional wording, and it's a lot of churches will have this, one of the phrases is God's mercy falls on the just and the right. In Community of Christ Sings, the newest version of our hymnal, has been changed to God's mercy falls on the just and the unjust. So it removes that prosperity gospel that John had been talking about. As he was sharing with us, my mind kept going back to this past Sunday. I had the opportunity to speak in another congregation, and hear his voice was a theme. And I tweaked it because I want to talk about worthiness. And I've really felt, and John was talking about this tonight, that so often people look at, if you're worthy, you will be blessed. If you're not being blessed, you're therefore not worthy. And the message I wanted to bring on Sunday and wanted to bring tonight is that we are all worthy. And we don't earn God's grace. It's a gift that is freely given. So my challenge for you for this month is to think of someone, and it may be yourself, it may be someone else, but to think of someone who maybe you've viewed as being unworthy, or you struggle with that a little bit, and to consciously look at them and try to see that they are worthy, that they are of worth, they are of value, and they are loved by God, and hopefully also by you. Again, it might be yourself, which can be really, really difficult. And if it's not yourself, that's wonderful. There's usually someone you struggle with. And so if you can focus consciously for the next month, and maybe even be as bold as to pray for that person, and see what happens by month's end.
Thanks, Russ, and thank you to all of everyone for logging in. We actually held to our, even though on the rollout, we actually held to just about an hour, so we did a very good job. We actually have an actual time sheet, and it all worked. So anyway, so I really appreciate that everybody logging on for this and our inaugural Beyond the Walls service, and we'll be doing this, like I say, monthly, and then hopefully even more. If you are interested in joining more of the discussion with the congregation, you can private message me on Facebook, and also I can add you to our congregation Facebook group, and we'll be able to have additional discussions that will take place in the Facebook group. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Looking forward to hearing your feedback also.
Yeah, your feedback too. We would love to. Bye-bye.
Are we unmuted?
What are we doing on mute time where everybody gets to talk? Or? That's what we do. Yeah, that's good. Hi.